Rachaim, Rachaim, b'chol b'vaz deichol. Aradi yidon, ha'alam chutzi yirayni. Oy vay, la da da da. Als yoin mishkan kevoyi deichol. Oy vay, la da 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 yidon, la da 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 yidon. Zvil bayis ti vavartay. Als yoin mishkan kevoyi deichol. Oy vay, la da 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 yidon, la da 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 yidon. Zvil bayis ti vavartayni. Oy vay.
Shalom, my dear friends. Shalom. Today, the 25th of Elul of the year 5776, corresponding to the 28th of September of the year 2016, a most auspicious day in the Torah calendar for at the end of exactly 6 days from now. On the 6th day from now, we will be on the first day of the coming new year, Rosh Hashanah 5776. We have today the 25th of Elul, 26, 27, 28, 29, 5 more days of Elul, and then the 1st of Tishrei. And according to our tradition, the world began to be created, that is to say, according to the account of Genesis chapter 1, the first day of creation is associated with the 25th of Elul, and each of the subsequent days of the 6 days follows on, and Elul has 29 days, so the day after that, the 6th day, that is Rosh Hashanah, the day of the creation of man and the day of our recreation. And so this is a most auspicious day today for new beginnings and for new resolutions, and to prepare ourselves for the coming day of judgment, which is on Sunday night, Monday and Tuesday, the days of the festival of Rosh Hashanah. So without further ado, I'd like to launch now into today's studies and to go into our study of the book of Daniel. Shalom. Today, the 25th day of the month of Elul of the year 5776, corresponding to the 28th of September of the year 2016. And today we are reaching the climax of our study of the book of Daniel, the concluding sections of chapter 11 and chapter 12. And we've reached a point in our studies where we have been looking in chapter 11 at the section that alludes to the intensification of the exile of Israel under the empire of Rome. And as we have discussed on earlier chapters of Daniel, the empire of Rome is considered to be bound up with the empire of Ishmael. They are the twin empire alluded to already in the toes of iron and clay in Nebuchadnezzar's dream, and subsequently alluded to in later visions in the book. And we had reached the end of verse 34, having seen how it was the intrigues between the last kings of the Hashmonean line that brought Rome into direct involvement in the affairs of Judea, and subsequently came and destroyed the temple. The Romans went on to destroy the temple, and the previous verse had spoken about the stumbling of Israel, even of the righteous of Israel, under the horrendous oppressions of the exiles across Europe and North Africa and into Asia. And we had seen in verse 34 how ever the ray of divine providence over the Jewish people, the Yehudim in their exile, over Hikoshlom Ye'ozru Ezer Ma'ot, even in their stumbling, even when encountering all the intense curses of Leviticus and Deuteronomy in exile, even so, there would be the little bit of help from above. V'nilvu aleim rabbi b'halach lakois, as we said at the end of the previous discussion, this would seem to be taken to refer to the assimilation, the acculturization among many of the Yehudim into the surrounding societies of Greek and Roman culture. They attach themselves to these surrounding majorities. Many people attach themselves to them, b'chalak lakois, in the slippery, smooth ways. And verse 35, a very significant verse, Umin amaskilim yikoshlu litzroif bohem. From among the maskilim, among the intelligent, the wise in the ways of the Torah, the wise in the calculation of the times, yikoshlu, they too would stumble, litzroif bohem, in order to, the expression of tzrof is as you would put metal into a crucible until it's melted, until all the impurities come out. You are smelting and purifying them through this test of fire. In other words, the wise were looking to dates when they believed that the end of that exile would come, and they miscalculated. Rashi and other commentators give as examples. Malbim specifically refers to Rabbi Akiva in the early 2nd century of the Common Era, around the year 130, the time of the rebellion of Bar Kokhba, did believe that Bar Kokhba, or as he came to be known, Bar Kokhba means son of the star, but he later became known as Bar Koziva, the one who had caused treachery and lies through the thwarting of his rebellion against the Romans that led to the terrible massacres of the remaining Jews and the almost near total destruction of the Jewish communities in Israel, not completely. There was never no Jewish habitation in the land of Israel throughout all the exile. But even the maskilim, the masters like Rabbi Akiva, stumbled. The same could be said to apply from the rabbinical Jewish perspective to those who came after who latched on to the followers of Yeshua when it was starting to become turned into a cult and presented him as the Mashiach who was supposed to come, who showed all the signs, and the second coming has not happened. And all of this was ulevorer ulelabein ad eis kates, to clarify, to purify, to whiten, to cleanse the sins of the people until the time of the end. Ki od lamoed, for there is yet time to come until the moed, till the appointed season. So now we see how the king of this ultimate empire gets up. The following verse 36, is seen in different ways by commentators. Some consider it to be referring to the expansion of Rome, the propagation by Rome of what they presented as their new version of Christianity. Malbim looks back to his own commentary on chapter 8, where the mighty mouth speaking wonders he associates with the founder of Islam. So here we really have the two alluded to here are the two offshoots, the side of Edom, the side of what became Christianity, and the side of Ishmael, what became Islam. Ve'asa kiritzonoi hamelech, he did according to his will, the king. That could be construed in a number of different ways as the leader of these empires, or of God, the king, actually through his will acting on everything. However, it is vayisroimeim vayisgadil al kol eil. He exalted himself and he magnified himself above every god. V'al eil eilim yidabir niflois, and upon the God of the gods shall he speak wonders. V'hitzliach, and he shall succeed ad kolo za'am, until the consumption, until the end of the completion of the za'am, the fury, the rage of the exile. Ki necherotzo ne'esoso, it is already decreed. Necheratz means that it is absolutely determined. Ne'esoso, it's as done. It's a done thing that all this is going to happen. So from verse 36, we do clearly see the pretensions of both sides of this. The Edomite side that says there is only one way to the God of gods, and that is through him and through their established institutions. And on the other side, there is only one prophet, and he is God's appointed emissary in this world, and everything else is denied. And verse 37 continues with the implied criticism of these two offshoots. V'al Elohei avuisov lo yovin, over the God of his fathers he shall not understand. He does not seek to understand the more ancient truths from which each of these two diverged. V'al chemdas noshim, nor on the beauty of women. Well, we saw that Ibn Ezra construes this as evidence against this, referring to the Ishmael branch, because the founder of that branch is said to have been very much involved with women. But if we construe this as referring to Israel, this would be a more appropriate explanation of this phrase, al chemdas noshim. Chemda is the noun of something that is chamud, greatly desired, with great charm and beauty. So chemdas noshim would be the very epitome of chemda, of all women, which, as we see from Song of Songs, refers to none other than Israel. So these two rivals to the centrality of the prophecy of Moses through Israel, these two, each one of them in their own way is refusing to look at the God of their fathers, because each one represents a turning aside from the Torah of Moshe, and they will not look at the role of Israel. Each one of them was a replacement theology-based pathway. V'al kol Eloha, over every God, Lo yovin, he shall not understand. Ki al koil is gadol, for over all shall he be magnified. Well, now Malbim, looking at this as allusion to the side of Ishmael, sees how the innovation of Ishmael into the world was the denial of anything except a very, very strict form of monotheism, which although Islam did integrate various pagan practices and has various pagan attitudes, but one thing is very characteristic of Islam, according to the explicit belief system, that is very strictly monotheistic. On the other hand, if we look at the Edomite side of all this, we see that the church, as it gained strength after the Constantine made Christianity the religion of the Roman Empire, the church was always willing to integrate surrounding paganism in, and to actually integrate a whole lot of different deities and semi-deities under their umbrella. And this is alluded to here seemingly in verses 38 onwards. V'le'eloha mo'uzim al kanoi yechabed. To the God of the ma'uzim, of the strong ones, upon his basis shall he give honor. ולאלוהה אשר לא ידעוהו אבותיו יכביד בזהוב ובכסף ובאבן יקורו ובחמודוis. And to a God that his fathers did not know, he shall give honor with gold and with silver, with precious stones and with precious delights and possessions. So Rashi tells us on this verse a very important perush explanation. I'd like to get the Rashi on your screen. Le'eloha mo'uzim, to the God of the keruvim, the God of the cherubs, asher yikroto imo brit, that they would forge with him a covenant. Al kanoi yechabed, he will give honor to the God of the cherubs, which seemingly would allude to the Holy One, blessed be he, the God of the Torah. Outwardly, al kanoi yechabed, in its base will he give it honor. Ki yachanif es ha'umois l'hiyosom kevushim loi, he will flatter the nations in order to make them subject to him. And this was a method of Roman colonization and imperial rule, that they would integrate local customs and local deities into their official religion in order to keep the people under them. So verse 39, ואוסו למבצרי מואוזים עם אלוה ניחור אשר יכיר ירבה חובוid. he shall do to the fortresses of their strongholds with the alien god, the pagan god, Asher Yakir, that he shall show recognition to this God, Yarbe Chovoid, he will multiply glory, he will greatly honor, Vehim Shilom Borabim, he shall set them in power, authority, and government over the many. Va'adomo yechalik b'mechir, he shall share out land for a price. Well, this verse can also be seen as exemplification of the material expansion of both sides here, the Edomite and the Yishmaelite, both of whom bought nations through their flattery and also through their conquest, of course, but also through setting up imperial systems where people got the lands that was worthwhile to have them, they got land cheap. And here again we are seeing the colonialistic methods of these two cultures, of the east and the west, of Ishmael and of Edom, who are spreading and taking over the world in this way. And here we are seeing an historical cycle that has been repeated ever since until today. We are actually seeing the continuing war of these cultures. And here we come to it in verse 40. Over Eis Kates, when the time does come for the very end, Yisnagach Imoi Melech Hanegev, there shall fight and battle with him the king of the south. So here we have been talking until now of the king of the north. In the whole previous section that was speaking, as I said, about Aram and Edom and Ishmael. These are both attained supremacy over the northern sections of Europe and into Asia Minor and into Asia. In other words, where the children of Japhet, Greece, Rome, extended inwards, their influence was primarily there. And then there came the Ishmaelites and spread from the east. Nevertheless, the king of the south is inclined more to the children of Ham. His center is in Egypt, and now so we've been speaking in the previous verse about the cultural hegemony of the north, but now up comes the king of the south. Vayistoer olov melech hatzofon. There shall storm against him the king of the north. We now have a world war going on, and here our commentators take this to be bound up with the final war of Gog and Magog. Gog is a northern king in terms of our studies. The area of the kingdom of Magog, which is the kingdom of Gog, is in the area that was allocated by Noah to his son Japhet, namely Noah's Ark came down on Mount Ararat, which is called in Aramaic the Hari Kurdu, the mountains of the Kurds, Kurdistan. In other words, we are talking about the whole area between northeast Iran and north Iraq and northwest Iran and northern Iraq and northeast Syria and eastern Turkey, and particularly the area of Armenia and between the Black and the Caspian Seas. So this chapters where all this, these are the forces, the northern king and the southern king are now locked in battle. Vayistar alov melech hatzofon berechev uferoshim. He comes with rechev, with vehicles, peroshim, with captains with riders, uva oniois rabois, with many ships. He comes into lands and he sweeps them away and passes on. Well, this verse can apply to many periods of the thousands of years, over 2,000 years and several hundreds plus since Daniel's prophecy. We have in our times witnessed something not unlike this when if Saddam Hussein in Iraq could be seen as the southern king at that time, and along came United States and Russia, NATO, and dozens of other countries all against him. That was all actually going on in a modern way. We've also seen the battles between if we look back in history over the 2,000 years, between the Christian Crusaders and the Muslims. It's all been going on. And in verse 41, Uvo be'eretz hatzvi. He comes into the land of precious delight and favor. This is the land of Israel. V'rabois yikoshelu. Very many shall stumble. So appear to be perhaps many lands, to judge by the continuation of the verse. Ve'ele yimoltu miyodoi. These shall be saved from his hand. Those who are going to be saved from his hand are the three biblical nations closest to Israel. And they are Edom, Moav, Vereshis b'nei Ammon. The original biblical lands of Edom, Moab and Ammon are to the east of the land of Israel, going up from the south. Edom is actually to the south of the so-called Dead Sea. These are the territories of the original Har Seir, the inheritance of Edom. Then going up on the east side of the Yam HaMelach, the Salt Sea, the so-called Dead Sea, you have successively Moab, which is today in southern Jordan, and Reshis b'nei Ammon, the head of the children of Ammon. Ammon, we can see here the latter-day name of the capital of Jordan, which is Amman, and these are the territories that were occupied in biblical times by Ammon. Moab and Ammon were the children of the two daughters of Lot. Through him, Moab, the kingdom of the son of the first one, who was more explicit that she had conceived from her father. The children of Ammon were, she simply called him a member of her people, being more modest about it. And in the merit of Abraham, the territories of Moab and Ammon, which are the east bank of the River Jordan today, and Edom, which parts of which are already integrated into Medinat Israel, the borders of the state of Israel in the Negev. So these are going to be saved. Exactly what all the references are here to the progress of the war we have yet to see, but let us go on to the conclusion of today's chapter. Vayishlach yodoi ba'arotzois, he shall send forth his hand in the lands. Ve'eretz Mitzrayim loy sehir lifleto, the land of Egypt shall not be for an escape, for refuge. It will not be escape the judgment. Umoshal b'michmani azohov v'hakesef, and he shall rule over the treasuries, the hidden treasures of the gold and the silver, uv'chol chamudois mitzroyim, and all of the precious charming delights, treasures of Egypt. Veluvim v'chushim b'mitzodov. The lubim in contemporary Hebrew, luv refers to Libya. Kushim would refer to northeast Africa of Ethiopia and surrounding areas, the origins of of Africa, the African populations. B'mitzodov, these are in the footsteps of this conquering king. Well, this appears to be the king of the north who's having this enormous international influence against the king of the south and bringing in all of these others. We can perhaps see some contemporary references here. We do see the focus of current events has been very much on Libya in recent years. It's been a source of great destruction. So has Egypt after the so-called Arab Spring. Kushim in Ethiopia, Somalia, Eritrea, all of these have been hotspots where we see that the Western powers are up to their ears in all of these nations' affairs. And now a very interesting in our context verse, Ushmois Yevahaluhu, but reports will throw him into confusion. Could also be construed as will throw them into confusion. Mimizrach umitzafoin, coming from the east and from the north. He shall go forth in great anger to destroy and to extirpate very many. Well, now, Rashi has the most interesting comment in our present-day context, to my mind, on this verse. Shmuos, these reports, Yenishma loy shebo olav milchomo mimizroch, there shall be heard to him that there's coming upon him a war from the east. Vehu keren atzeiro, and that is the little horn, shehu mimalchus Yishmael, that is from the empire of Ishmael, ha'omur lamalo, referred to above. I told you by mistake, this is from Rashi. This is not Rashi. This is the commentary of Metzudat David, a rabbi living in Eastern Europe about 250 years ago. Tells us that the report coming to the west is coming from the east, from the little horn, that is the empire of Ishmael referred to earlier. And it'll also be heard to him that there's coming against him a war from the north. Well, the north could refer to Russia, it could refer to North Korea, could have many possible implications here. These reports will throw him into confusion. He shall go forth against them with great wrath, in order to destroy those false religions. Well, that we apparently have yet to wait to see exactly what are the implications of this. Let us now come to the concluding verse of chapter 11 of Daniel. Vayita ohole apadno, he shall plant the tents of his palace, Benyamim lahar tzvi kodesh, between the seas and the mount of the holy favor, the blessed favor. Uvo ad kitzoi, and he shall come to his end. Ve'ein oizer loi, and there shall be none helping him. This would appear to be referring to the end of the last king of the earthly empires, after which it will be the even, the stone cast by the hand that we've seen referred to in the earlier prophecies, that will destroy the worldly empires and give over the malchut, the true kingship, to the children of Israel, the Kadosh Elyon. And this will come about in a most fearsome manner, and we are awaiting to see how this shall be. And with the help of God, we will quickly witness Melech Mashiach and the unfolding of all the final vindication of the Torah in our time. With this, we bring today's Daniel study to a close, and I'll be back in a very short while with Mishnah study. Shalom again from Yerushalayim. Today we will come to the very interesting section of our Mishnah that speaks about the actual details of procedure in a case where a killing had taken place. Shalom. Today, the 25th day of the month of Elul of the year 5776, corresponding to the 26th of September of the year 2016. And we continue our studies of Mishnah Tractate Mascot, dealing in chapter 2 here with the laws of the killer. And we had already seen in the last mission that we learned, Mishnah's Dalet and Hay, how the cities of refuge biblically prescribed in the end of the book of Numbers and Deuteronomy chapter 19 were positioned in order to give every opportunity to a person that had killed somebody to escape the wrath and anger of the avenger of the blood. And now in Mishnah Vov, the sixth Mishnah of chapter 2 of Makot, we see how the procedure was. Rabbi Yosef bar Yehuda Omer, Rabbi Joseph the son of Judah says, Batechilo, at the start, that is to say, after a killing had taken place, at the start of the proceedings, echod shoigeg ve'echod mezid makdimin le'orei miklot. It will be one and the same, an unintentional killer, a shoigeg, or a mezid, a willful intentional killer. They would go straight off to the cities of refuge. Uveis din sholchin umavin oisoi misham. The Beis Din would send and bring the accused individual from there. An interesting feature of the beginning of Mishnah Vov is that the law is given over in the name of Rabbi Yossi bar Yehuda. It's a little unusual, as this is the accepted law that both a shoigeg and a mezid, an unintentional and an intentional killer, would make off immediately after the killing to a place of safety in a city of refuge. So why is the halacha brought down in the name of Rabbi Yossi bar Yehuda? Because of the great humility of Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi, the author of the Mishnayot, whose own view differs from that of Rabbi Yossi bar Yehuda. In a brisa, that is a Mishnaic formulation which is not included in the Mishnah, we hear that Rabbi, that is to say Rabbi Yehuda the Prince, the author of the Mishnah, held that it was the problem was that even the mezid, the willful killers, thought in their own eyes that they could and should be able to find refuge in the cities of refuge. They go off by themselves, whereas Rabbi Yossi bar Yehuda is saying that this was the first step in the judicial procedure, and Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi, the author of the Mishnah, effaced his own view out of the Mishnah in favor of Rabbi Yossi bar Yehuda, to whom he gives the prominence in giving over this law. So either way, the person that had perpetrated some killing was in the city of refuge, and the Beis Din, that is to say a competent Sanhedrin of 23 members empowered to judge a capital case at a time when the great Sanhedrin is in Jerusalem, at a time when the temple is standing, they would then send and bring him for trial. Mi shenischayv miso bebeis din, whoever would be condemned to execution by the court, as we have seen in our study of Mishnah Sanhedrin, the whole procedure for determining a capital case where the person is executed. Haraguhu, they would kill him, they would execute him. V'shaloi nischayev miso, if there was somebody that was not liable to execution, Petoruhu, they would exempt him, they would send him off free. That would be a case, for example, where the killing had an element of negligence in it that was too much to enable the person to seek refuge in a city of refuge, but not enough to execute him. So he would be sent to live facing the constant threat of an avenger coming against him. Mishin is Chayev Golus, the one that was condemned to Golus, to exile, that is, exile to a city of refuge. Machazirin Oisoi Lemakoimoi, they would take him back to his place. Shenemar, that is what is said, the implication of the verse in Numbers chapter 35. Veheshivu Oiso Ho'edo El Ir Miklotoi. The Eidor, that is to say the assembly of the judges that determined that he was liable to exile, they will bring him back to the city of refuge. All of which indicates that he had been there from the outset. When the proceedings began, he was taken for trial in the city or locality where the killing had taken place, and then was now being taken back to the city of refuge. Well, now, the Torah states that he would have to stay in the city of refuge until such time as the high priest, who was ministering at the time of the crime, would die, and only then would he be able to go back to live a life of a civilian in his own locality. So now the question which the Mishnah continues to deal with next is the death of which high priest, because there are a number of priests that qualify for the term Kohen Gadol, the high priest. So the Mishnah tells us, Echod Moshuach b'shemen amishcho. It will be one and the same if it was the Kohen Gadol, the high priest, that was Moshuach, anointed with the shemen hamishcho, with the oil of the anointing, referring to the anointing oil that was made by Moshe in the wilderness for the inauguration of the sanctuary and for the inauguration of Aaron and his sons as the priests. And the vial of the anointing oil existed in the first temple, and prior to the destruction of the first temple, it was hidden away together with the Ark of the Covenant and with the vial of the flask of the manna and some other items into the chambers way within a tunneled system under the Temple Mount by King Yoshiyahu, the last righteous king of Judah. So this law of the high priest who was anointed with the Shemen HaMishcho applied in the first temple and will apply when the anointing oil comes back in the coming temple speedily in our times. V'yechod amerubo b'v'godim. It's also one and the same, also qualifying for the role of the high priest with whose death the exiled killer will be able to return, will be merube b'v'godim, the priest that was multiplied in his garments. That is to say, besides being anointed with the Shemen HaMishcho, the anointing oil, the high priest wore the distinctive 8 garments of the high priest that only the high priest could wear, in addition to the 4 garments of a regular priest. So on being appointed high priest, he was merube b'v'godim. He was increased, multiplied in the number of his garments from 4 up to 8, including the me'il, the blue coat, the ephod, the kind of apron, and the choshen, the breastplate, and the tzitz, the name of Hashem above his forehead in gold. Ve'echod she'ova memeshichosoi. Another candidate of high priest with whose death the killer could come home would be a high priest she'ova memeshichosoi. He passed from his anointed status. An example of this would be a high priest who was all ready to serve on Yom Kippur in the temple, who on the night of Yom Kippur, if he were to suffer a seminal emission, then he would be unfit for service in the temple because of his impurity on account of that. So in that case, as we see in Tractate Yoma, there was a candidate ready to take over the high priesthood should the incumbent high priest be disqualified. So this would be the case of the one that was disqualified, who could not serve on the Yom Kippur, would be a high priest who had been displaced after having been anointed high priest for that reason or something similar. So it is with the death of any one of these 3 mentioned so far in our Mishnah, Machzirin es Aritzach, their death would bring back the killer to his hometown. And Rabbi Yehuda adds another one, Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Af Moshuach Milchomo. In addition, the priest that is anointed specifically to serve as high priest in time of war, Machazir es Arotziach, with his death he would be bringing back the killer back home. So the halacha is not like Rabbi Yehuda. It's only the first 3 categories whose death would bring back the killer. Lefichoch, and for that reason, because it was the death of the high priest that would bring back the killer, imoisehen shel kohanim, the mothers of the priests, mesapkois lohen michyo, they would go and send livelihood to these killers in their city of refuge. They are in what we, in contemporary terms, would call a place of rehabilitation. And the mothers of the high priest had a particular interest in ensuring that they would be happy and content there and not be praying for the high priest's son of these mothers to die so they'd be able to go back to their homes. So they would send them michyo or Jesus, covering, namely clothes, so they should not be praying over the sons of these mothers of priests, that these priests as high priests should die. And now we come into some specific technical details about if the high priest died in close proximity to the sentencing of this individual. Under what circumstances would the death of a high priest enable this case to come back? Mishenigmar dinoi meis kohen gadol. If after the verdict had been completed on this killer, if it was then that the high priest died, so the high priest was alive when the verdict was given, harizeh enoi goyle, this one does not go into exile. This killer will not go into exile because he had already had the decree passed and then the high priest died. That nullified his exile. If the killing had taken place, but all the time up to not having been completed the verdict, in other words, if during the run-up to the verdict the high priest died and they appointed another one in his place all before the verdict, it was after that his verdict was determined, he will go back only with the death of the new incumbent who was already appointed before his verdict was given. So going straight into Mishnah Zayin, the 7th Mishnah, the continuation of this law, we now come to the exceptional and unusual case. Nigmar dinoi beloi kohen gadol. If his verdict was delivered at a time when there was no high priest. In other words, the high priest had died, the Sanhedrin determined this individual guilty, and only after that is there going to be a new high priest appointed. He is never going to be able to come home. That's the first category of those who cannot come home. The second, a'oireg kohen gadol. Somebody who killed the high priest, he will never come home. V'kohen gadol shehorag, a high priest that killed somebody. All of these can never have sufficient atonement for their sin. They will have to stay in the city refuge till the end of their days. They will never come forth from there forever. And now we continue with laws referring to all of the people who are in these rehabilitation cities, that they cannot go out. This is a form of detention. It is not a prison. And the whole intention was that these people who had committed what borders on murder should have a chance to rehabilitate truly, but they are not free to go wherever they wish. He cannot go out not to testify, to provide testimony in the case of some mitzvah. If his testimony was required in a Bet Din, in a court, he would not be able to go to give them the testimony, even though it would, in other cases, be a mitzvah upon him to give testimony. But here, because he has to stay there and be there, he can't go. V'lo le'edus mammon. Certainly not for testimony relating to some financial case. V'lo le'edus nefashos, not to testimony involving souls, a capital case. A case of the testimony of a mitzvah would be, for example, if he had sighted the new moon, he could not go to Jerusalem to testify before the Bet Din that he'd seen the new moon. Edus mammon, any monetary case involving loans and debts and the like. Lo edus nefashos, not if he had seen somebody commit a capital crime. Even if Israel needed him, he may still not go back. He cannot be rehabilitated that easily. Not even the captain of the army of Israel, like Joab, the son of Tzeruya, who was the captain of David throughout his struggle against King Saul and into the reign of David, who is perhaps specified here because Yoav ben Tzeruya was involved in a killing and was seen by David as a man whose hands were stained with blood, although he did try to take refuge at the altar, but even he, who in the time of David was needed by all of Israel in the wars against Aram, he could not come forth had he been in the city of refuge. He would never be able to go out of there forever. In this case that we saw, where the person's verdict was passed at a time when there was no Kohen Gadol, only afterwards there was a new Kohen Gadol appointed, or if he'd killed the Kohen Gadol, or if he was a Kohen Gadol that had killed Shne'emar, according to the support of the biblical verse, Numbers chapter 35, Asher Nos Shama. He that has taken refuge, Shama, there, he's got to be there. He fled to there, and Shama, there shall he be. Shama, Sham de'i dirosoi, there shall be his residence. This is a drush that the sages have drawn out of this expression, Shama. Sham de'i misasoi, there shall be his death. Sham de'i kavurosoi, there shall be his burial. Now, we need to understand and determine what exactly are the boundaries of the city of refuge to know at what point the man is safe, is he trying to get in, and at what point is he in danger if he goes out. So the Mishnah continues, Kashem shor ir koiletes, just like the city itself, the built-up city is absorbing and receiving the fugitive killer, Kach techumo koilet, so too her boundary is absorbing. We have a principle known from the laws of Shabbat that a city has a boundary around it of 2,000 cubits from the outer edge of the city. That is called the tchum of the city. And once the killer gets within that tchum, so he will be safe from the vengeance of the Goel Hadam, the avenger. If the killer went outside of this designated tchum, the 2,000 cubit limit of the Shabbat boundaries of the city, Goel Adam, and they found him the avenger of the blood, Rabbi Yosef HaGalili Omer mitzvah b'yad Goel Adam. Rabbi Yosef the Galili says that it is a positive mitzvah on the hand of the avenger of the blood to kill this man, to kill this killer that left the boundary of the city of refuge. And Rabbi Yosef Glili continues, Ureshus beyad kol adam. It is reshus, a matter of free will, it is permissible in the hand of anyone else who chooses to kill him. If somebody kills that exiled killer, they will not be held liable for murder, And according to Rabbi Yossi, it's a positive mitzvah for the avenger to kill him. Rabbi Akiva holds differently, and the halacha is like Rabbi Akiva here. Rabbi Akiva omer reshus biyad goel adom. It is a matter of free will and entitlement in the hand of the avenger of the blood. He may or may not kill him according to as he sees fit. V'chol odom ein chayovin olav. Everyone else, kol odom, anybody else, ein chayovin olav, would not be held liable if they killed him. According to the way Rabbi Akiva has phrased the law, if somebody else did kill him, they do not have authorization to kill him, but if they already did it, they will not be held liable to murder because he was a killer. Well, now we come to a detailed issue about the exact boundary of the city of refuge and its tchum, its 2,000 cubit boundary. Elon, shehu omed besoch atchum. If there was a tree that is standing within the outer limit of the boundary, v'noifoi noite chutz latchum. Its naf, its foliage, its branches are inclined outside of the perpendicular limit of the tchum. Or if the tree was standing outside the boundary, the root of the tree, the trunk, but it's inclining the foliage, it's inclining inside the tchum, inside the limit. Everything goes after the foliage. That is to say that if the foliage if the tree was rooted inside the boundary but its foliage was outside, once the killer got under the branches of the tree, he's safe. It is not allowed to kill him there because that is considered inside the city of refuge. But if he takes hold of a tree whose trunk is rooted outside the boundary, it is open to discussion what exactly the implications of the words of the Mishnah here are. It would appear that the halacha is that since the naf, the foliage, is inside the boundary, so that tree already is considered to be part of the city of refuge, even though the trunk is outside. If he takes hold of the trunk, he will be safe there, and that is the halacha. If the killer now goes and kills someone else in the same city, in circumstances where he will be liable to galut, to exile, to a city of refuge, goyle mishchuno lishchuno. He will have to go to exile from one neighborhood where he had been living to a new neighborhood. Uven Levi, if it was a Levite who perpetrated the killing unwittingly, and besides the 6 cities of refuge in the land of Israel and on the east side of the Jordan, the other 3 that would be added at the end of time, also the 42 Levitical cities absorbed killers. So if it's a Ben Levi, if a Ben Levi has killed and is in exile and now kills again, has to go into exile, goyle me'ir le'ir. He will go into exile from one city to another. And now we'll come to the concluding Mishnah of chapter 2 of Makos to conclude the subject of the killer. Kayotzevoi, similarly, if there was a killer that went out to exile to his city of refuge, and the people of the city wanted to show him honor, because besides the killing, he may have been a person who was worthy in other ways. He has to tell them, that he demurs because he has killed. Amru loi afal pichein, if they say to him, even so, nevertheless, despite that fact, we still wish to give you honor, yekabel mehen, he may receive from them, shenemar, as it is written in Leviticus chapter 19, in the portion of the Rotzach. The whole portion begins with Ze Devar Arotzach. This is the matter of the killer, and the word Devar means the word. We follow his word. So he has to first demur, but afterwards he may accept the honor. Malim oyu schar lalevim divrei Rabbi Yehuda. They, namely the killers resident in one of the Levitical cities, if that was where they took up refuge, because as I said, the 42 Levitical cities also provide refuge to killers, were also rehabilitation centers in the hopefully beneficial influence of the Levites, particularly close to the study and practice of the Torah. So the killers living there, Malim hayu sacha, they would have to pay up rent to the Levites. Divrei Rabbi Yehuda, that is the opinion of the words of Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Meir Omer, Rabbi Meir says, Lo hayu malim lohen sacha. They did not have to pay rent. And another dispute between the same two rabbis, after the exile killer, after the death of the Kohen Gadol, the high priest, goes home, he may go back to the appointment that he had prior to the murder and his exile. These are the words prior to the killing, I should say, not the murder, the unintentional killing. If he held some office, he may go back to that office. These are the words of Rabbi Meir, who takes the more lenient view. Rabbi Judah says he would not go back to the office that he had. It would not be appropriate to allow him to just simply return to a public position after such a terrible thing had happened. And with that, we conclude chapter 2, Perek Bet of Masechet Makot, the tractate of Makot. And in chapter 3, we shall come to the actual subject that gives its name to our tractate, the subject of the 39 lashes, and see when they're applied and how they're applied. So with that, my dear friends, let us again take a very brief interlude, and I will then get back to you with a few words of inspiration based upon Chassidut, Bezrat Hashem, with the help of God. So just a few minutes of interval, and then I'll be back.
Oy Rachaim, Rachaim, bechal b'vaz deichol. Aradi yidon, ha'alam chutzi yirayni. Oy vai, la da da da. Al ziyoin mishkan kevoyi deichol. Oy vai, la da 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 yidon, la da 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 yidon. Zvil bayis tifa vavartayni. Oy Rachaim, Rachaim, bechal b'vaz deichol. Aradi yidon, ha'alam chutzi yirayni. Oy vai, Al ziyoin mishkan kevoyi deichol. Oy vai, la da 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 yidon, la da 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 yidon. Zvil bayis tifa vavartayni. Oy vai. Oy vai, la da da di doi, la da da di doi. You vai me gulayni, you vai me gulayni, you vai gulayni. Oy vai.
Shalom again, my dear friends. And in the last few minutes that we have today for our studies, I would like to just say a few words about the coming Rosh Hashanah and how Chassidut can give us ways of relating to Rosh Hashanah. On Azamra website recently, I had up a link to the weekly reading, which was from my study Wings of the Sun on the Torah pathway of healing. There was a link to a particular teaching of Rabbi Nachman of Breslev, which is really the key to his entire healing Torah. And I've quoted from it earlier this week, the section that speaks about how the ultimate destiny of Israel is to rise above the angels, to be drawing God's blessing into the world and beneficent influences. And the whole teaching is very long and richly structured. But I'd like to mention a most fascinating idea that he brings to us towards the end of the teaching, where after going on a very lengthy spiritual excursus, he comes to the subject of Rosh Hashanah, which was the day when the teaching was delivered in the year 1808, in the autumn of that year. And he said that really only God can make Rosh Hashanah, because according to the dictum of our sages, you can only judge somebody if you come into their place. Only if you're in somebody else's place, if you're in their shoes, can you really judge them. And the only one that can be in everybody's place is God. And the reason why God is in every place is because God is the creator of place, of space. And as it were, space as we know it is within God. God is the place within which the space of this universe is to be found, where it exists. And so God is in every place, in every space, and therefore God alone knows how to judge. And Rabbi Nachman continues the most beautiful idea that is based by our sages upon a particular detail of a text in the book of Numbers, in the portion of Pinchas, which speaks about the sacrifices of Rosh Chodesh. Rosh Chodesh, the new moon, where the sacrificial oxen and the lambs had in addition the sa'ir lachatat, a goat for a sin offering. And nowhere in the case of all the other goat offerings offered on the various festivals in the portion of the korbanot, in the portion of Pinchas, unlike every other place where the sin offering is mentioned, here the Torah says, So'ir chatos lashem, goat that will be a sin offering for Hashem, for God. Which implies that somehow God might need a sin offering, an atonement, as it were, for himself. And our sages explain this through the concept known in Kabbalah as the mi'ut alavana. Mi'ut, the diminution of the levana, the moon. There's a well-known midrash that originally God created the sun and the moon equal, and the moon said to God, well, how can two kings both have the crown? We can't be ruling together. And therefore God said to the moon, diminish yourself. And the moon, because of her audacity, became diminished until in the end of days she gets the crown again, and she comes to rule with the sun, receiving all the light of the sun directly. Now this is a very deep concept, this concept of the diminution of the moon. The concept here is one of tzimtzum, one of the contraction of the divine light. Darkness is itself a contraction of light from within the darkness. The light contracts out, leaving a place of apparently no light, even though we know God is in darkness as in light. When the light is absent, then it appears as though there is no God. And this is an allusion to us brought about through the contraction of God from the space in which he created our world, and the apparent absence of God from the world, from the gambling house, from the brothel, from the streets, from the jungle, from business, from all over the place. The apparent absence of God, which is a flaw in the world, is actually provides us with the theater of all of our challenge to serve God within a world where we can't so easily find him and see him and trust him. And it was God indeed who created this flaw, and Rabbi Nachman puts together the two midrashim of the goat for the Rosh Chodesh, which is as it were, for Hashem, who caused the moon to diminish herself, who brought darkness into creation. And this flaw, as it were, because God is aware of the flaw, God therefore understands that we come from a place that is flawed. And that way God judges us compassionately. This is the tremendous sweetening of the judgment that comes about when we realize that God fundamentally, intrinsically looks upon us with compassion. It's not a terrible ordeal with hellfire and fury, God forbid, coming after the day of judgment. Rabbi Nachman is teaching us that the hidden, loving, compassionate God is to be found even in the greatest contraction. And this contraction is in that little tiny bit of light that exists even amidst all the darkness. That me'at, that little bit of light, that little bit of the point of light, the moon itself, when it disappears at the end of the lunar month, the first thing that happens with the new month is the tiny sliver of light of the new moon, which becomes apparent. And this symbolizes, as brought out by Rabbi Nachman and in his teachings, the way that even the tiniest spark of light can be drawn out to develop into a whole koma, a whole edifice of attachment, love, and fear of God. So Rosh Hashanah, the new year, falls on the night of Rosh Chodesh. We do not actually refer explicitly to Rosh Chodesh, the new moon, throughout all of the liturgy of Rosh Hashanah, the new year, where the new moon, as it were, slips away, even though Rosh Hashanah occurs on the first night when the new moon is visible, which this year is this coming Sunday, October the 2nd, Sunday evening. The moon is visible on the western horizon to places where there's a clear sky and the view is not obscured. And Rosh Hashanah is always on the new moon, and this is the mystery of Rosh Hashanah, that the new moon is a symbol that even out of the darkness there comes the light, and if God has created the darkness, he will create the light, and through this compassionate, loving light we can judge ourselves and our true fellows in faith and Torah in the scale of merit, and God will bring forth our judgment for a good, sweet, blessed new year. I'll be back, God willing, tomorrow with the next installment in our studies. Until then, from Yerushalayim, Shalom.
Asa